It's no secret that breakaway roping has taken the rodeo world by storm. With unparalleled growth and popularity, opportunities, and in turn competition, women that would have once been limited to the barrel racing and sport of professional rodeo continue to come out in droves to back in the box at some of the country's biggest rodeos. And Spearfish South Dakota cowgirl Rickie Fanning is one of the best. Rickie, I'm excited to have you on. Thanks for making time for us today.
Thank you for having me.
You will be back in Las Vegas for your second national finals breakaway roping. But you are a South Dakota high school rodeo all-around champion, continue to compete in multiple events at the collegiate level, winning the Rookie of the Year in Casper. I've seen you head steers. You can do it all. Why breakaway roping? Has it always been your strongest or favorite event? Or, what's your story? How'd you end up here?
Honestly, I enjoyed doing all the events in high school. Actually, probably my strongest event was goat tying, but getting the opportunity to go to a professional level with the breakaway roping is kind of why it took off. I mean, I've always enjoyed breakaway roping. It's always been a passion, but between barrel racing and breakaway roping, it's a little easier to find those horses, and we get to do it together with my sister, and so I think that's a big thing.
If I'm not mistaken, you're of the age that you were basically able to go straight from college into professional rodeo and never really had to hang it up or take a break or essentially back off in the breakaway roping, correct?
Yes.
So was the NFBR your end goal at the time you bought your card, or were you just going to hit a few circuit rodeos to get your feet wet? What did that initial planning and entering process look like for you personally?
Well, I actually got my card when I was still barrel racing. And we actually at the time didn't even think breakaway ropers were going to get an opportunity at what we get an opportunity at now. And so when we pursued it, I just entered because it was fun to go and do something different, be at the professional level with the breakaway roping. And so it's so cool to see it evolve to what it is now.
Generations of young women before you had a few amateur and open rodeo options after college, but it's an entirely different game today. Do you think the increased opportunities for breakaway ropers is helping to grow the sport faster, as girls aren't essentially, like I said, hanging up those rope cans after college and are able to go directly from high school to college to the professional ranks? I mean, there have always been great female ropers, but it seems like there's more getting to that elite level at a younger age or quicker. And I don't think you can't help but credit the growing number of high pressure and big money stages that they're getting to rope on today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, girls now day and age, from a young age, they can go rope at the American, they can go to some high, intense, pressured situations. And a lot of those younger kids are roping against the pros that are making the finals, that are going constantly on the road. So yeah, it gives them a huge opportunity and almost kind of an advantage, because at a young age, they get to learn how to rope fast. They get to learn to be at that level, at such a different level that they are on as a younger kid.
You can't talk about the explosion of the sport in recent years without looking at those greats who really did help to elevate the game. You talk about Joe B with his clinics and junior opens. You can't, ignore Larry D, Jackie, JJ, all the stock contractors and producers who included the breakaway roping in their amateurs for so long before pro rodeo even considered it. But I want to know who was instrumental in your career as a breakaway roper, but also across the Dakotas and Badlands as a whole. Who do you remember that continued to go above and beyond to provide those opportunities for young girls to rope up here?
For me, being up in South Dakota, we weren't around Jackie, LD, JJ, those guys much until I went down to Texas. So a big one up here was Jerry Gallagher and Carol Hollers. That's where we started. My dad is the one that got us going, and then from there, he sent us to those clinics, and getting the opportunity to go to those clinics at such a young age, that helped, I think, push us in the breakaway roping. And then even going down south, I mean, it was a whole different ballgame. And just in college rodeo, it was tough. Not saying up here isn't, but it was just different. There's no start. It's quick. You got to be ready to throw. And up here, there's a little bit more of a start. So down there, a big one too. I mean, I always looked up to LD. She's always been great to us, and getting the opportunity to call her whenever we need, when we have questions. And she was one that helped me. And also Kelsey Chase was a big one that I went over to her house a couple times, and she helped me kind of just figure out how to rope fast and what I needed to do to switch my game up from roping and scoring to trying to hit the line and be ready to throw every time.
You finished the 2022 season ninth in the world with nearly $73,500. This year, that same amount of money won would be good enough for a trip to the NFBR in the 15th hole. But the top 7 heading to Las Vegas have won over $100,000 in the regular season this year. Think about that. This is only the 4th year for the breakaway roping at the national finals, and half the qualifying field has over $100,000. What do you think is the biggest factor in that kind of growth? What does that look like on your end, having been on the road the last 2 years?
I think a lot of it's coming from those rodeos that are putting more money up for us. That's a big thing. The money is getting closer to being equal as other events. And then the bigger rodeos are putting in breakaway and giving us an equal shot, I guess you could say. But honestly, the winter rodeos, I think, where a lot of it's won. You can't beat the Houston, the Fort Worths, San Antonios. those rodeos have equal added money, and San Antonio does this year. And so getting those opportunities that I think if you capitalize in the winter, then it just goes to show how much more money you can have, even just competing throughout the summer too.
We can't talk about the regular season without talking rodeo count. The last few years, there hasn't been one. How do you feel about that? Is there any talk of adding a rodeo count? How do you think that will benefit the women, not only that are trying to make the finals, but whether they're going about it by rodeoing full time, or those that may, have a full-time job or a family at home and simply don't want to be on the road and prefer to utilize the circuit system and go that route?
I'm actually all for a rodeo count. And this year they did imply one. I don't know when it starts. I think it maybe is 24 or maybe 25, but it's 100 rodeo count. To me, I don't personally think that's going to do much. We fought hard to get it at 75 or 80 rodeos. They did a petition thing. We all signed it. We wanted 80 rodeos because kind of gives people the best of both worlds. People that don't want to go hard, they have a chance hitting some of the good rodeos and have a possibility to make the NFR. But personally, Taylor and I, we try to hit rodeos and do good at the ones we enter. We don't want to travel everywhere. I enjoy being home. I enjoy seeing my family. So it's hard to be on the road for 3 months at a time and not getting to come home and see them, or even just come home and practice or do something different. So I think a rodeo count, I think that would save a lot of people. I think it would save families. I think it would save all the hauling. I think people would do it more as like a business thing versus who has the opportunity in the backup that they can go to all these rodeos. And not a lot of people do, and those that are very fortunate. But getting the opportunities to rodeo is a blessing as it is. And so I think right now a lot of people just don't go about it the way that we should go about it if we would have a rodeo count.
It's kind of a double-edged sword. It's great that there's 100+ rodeos that are offering Breakaway at that level. But, that's a great point about not just saving money, the trailer race, but the families at home. It's a trickle-down effect for sure.
Oh, and that's another thing. I mean, the opportunity is crazy. I mean, it's awesome. But I also think on the flip side of that, it'll help a lot of those smaller rodeos that have had the same added money the last 3 years have to step up, because people might not enter their rodeos then if they don't have the money that they should. Because, I mean, you can go to $3,500 added rodeo and you're going to get the same amount of entries if it was $2,000. I mean, but those rodeos that are the lower level of added money, I think if you had a limit, okay, girls are going to start picking and choosing. Well, they're not going to hit that rodeo if it doesn't have the money that is needed for them to go. And so I think it'll help them step up and add that money that we need.
Are there still very many that aren't doing equal money for Breakaway as to the rest of the events, or is it pretty well, equal across the board now?
I couldn't tell you 100%, but I know that most rodeos don't have equal added money. Sometimes it'll be every other event have this much, then we usually have half as much. And you see it a lot more, I think, in smaller rodeos than the bigger rodeos. But yeah, there's definitely still not equal across the board.
The Badlands Circuit finals just wrapped up in Minot, where you won the first round with a 2-1. How do you think the Badlands Circuit stacks up to the rest of the country? Do you feel like if you can rope against the girls here, you can rope anywhere? The setups here compared to other places in the country. What's your 2 cents on that?
I love the Badlands Circuit. I think it's great, but the biggest thing is a lot of our good rodeos are over the 4th. Well, over the 4th brings in a lot of other girls, all the people from down south, all the ones that are going hard. So absolutely. I mean, I think it helps huge. You're roping against the top 20 in the world. And so I think that's really cool. But on the flip side of that, I also think that's hard too, because you have your circuit girls that just want to go to circuit rodeos. And so it's hard for them. A lot of our money won in our circuit is going out of circuit. So I think it's kind of tough because a lot of our good rodeos are where everyone wants to be.
Now, you weren't the only one in your family to compete in Minot. Your sister Taylor was also in the breakaway roping. Your brother Jace competed in the team roping. Talk to me about that. You mentioned that your dad was the one that kind of got you guys into rodeo. Do you all still practice and travel together throughout the year? Or what's that dynamic look like?
It was so much fun to be in Minot, all 3 together. I mean, just an opportunity in itself with my sister, my brother there. But yeah, my dad is the one that got us started. My mom was a huge supporter, but she wasn't much into the rodeo stuff. But my dad, yeah, he was the one that put us on our first horses. And we all traveled together all through junior high, middle school, high school. We all went everywhere together. And then as we started getting to college, we started I was down south, Jace was still up north. But then now me and my sister get to travel together everywhere. I mean, we didn't go to one rodeo by ourselves. We went to everything together. My brother, he doesn't travel as much because he's more of the circuit cowboy. He likes to stay around home a little bit more. But like those 4th rodeos and a lot of those other ones that we come back for, it's fun because we do get to try to enter together. We try to at least be somewhere where we can see each other. But I mean, just getting to grow and adapt to this lifestyle, having your family right there with you is the biggest thing.
That's what I was going to say. Do you feel like there's an advantage to not only practicing at home, but traveling together, having a little piece of familiarity there on the road versus traveling with someone that you might not be as close with or know as well?
Oh yeah, I think it's a huge advantage. I mean, Taylor and I read each other great. I mean, we're pretty polar opposite people, but I mean, we know each other's ins and outs. We know when I need my 5 minutes, she needs her 5 minutes. And it's hard. I mean, you live in a trailer and it's not very big, and you're on the road and you're tired, and a lot of things can go wrong. And so having somebody that you've grown up with, you're close with, I mean, it's a huge advantage. I mean, we rarely get into fights. We talk about all the situations we need to. And just have somebody to lean on too is a big thing. And basically, it's just a little bit of a confidence, like, hey, go do your job. I mean, we don't sit there and critique as you're going in. We make a game plan before. Okay, we talk about it. All right, situation. Okay, go do it, you know? But a big thing about family is I feel like when they walk in the box, you're like, okay, if they're going to do their job with my horse, I don't have to worry about that. I can back in the box and I can just go make my run. Then getting to come home and getting to practice together. I mean, it's always a competition in the practice arena too. So, I mean, you always have someone to try to push you to be better as well as being on the road, helping you be the best you can be.
Well, what you guys have been doing is obviously working because you're headed back to your second national finals breakaway roping at the South Point in Las Vegas, sitting 13th in the world standings with nearly $79,500 won on the year. How are you getting ready for that? Now that you've been there before, are you making changes in how you're preparing yourself or your horses, or what's that look like this year?
Definitely helps to be there before because you kind of know what to expect now, how fast it goes. But the same thing. I mean, I'm still practicing. I'm still trying to hit jackpots on my good horses, kind of try to just keep them fresh, keep them going. We're going to head down south at the end of November, hit some jackpots, but basically the same thing. Go out and just try to make my run every time. This year, I want to try to hit the barrier a little better. But other than that, I mean, I'm in this position where I can just go for it. I don't have much pressure on me. I just need to go for it and just keep working my way up, hopefully.
Tell us about the horses you're taking this year.
Old man, he's 21. He's going strong. He actually, I would say he 3/4 of the season I rode him this year because my gray got hurt. But then I'll take my gray as well, Copper. And he actually feels good. He's back and ready, but he got hurt in June, so old man had to finish out. But my gray, he's getting to the point where I could ride him on any setup, but he's really good on like the stronger calves. He's quick across the line and gets you there fast. And then my bay on the slow calves, he reads and rates off so well that he never oversteps that line that he needs to be at. And they're the two I've been most confident on. They've been there through the last 2 years, so it's their opportunity to show too.
We've already talked about the growth of Breakaway, but with that comes the explosion of the breakaway roping horse market. Now, you used to be able to pick up a relatively affordable cutting reject or maybe make one out of your team roping horse or a solid ranch horse and still be competitive. Are those days behind us?
I think to an extent, maybe. There's so many good horses out there, but the biggest thing about a breakaway horse that we look at is, yeah, we would like them to be showy and stuff, but if they can get you across the line when you drop your hand and they can get to your spot and they can lock it off fast enough to get the rope popped off, that's all we really look for. I mean, we don't have, I wouldn't say the flashiest, showiest horses, but they go out and do their job every time. And I think you can still take those horses, but I think there's some key points that you need to look at. Like I said, they need to be explosive out of the corner, and they need to be able to read and rate where they need to be. But other than that, I mean, yeah, the market is crazy right now, and there's a lot of good ones out there. And I think it's just going to keep getting better. But I don't think that we give up on the horses that can do the job as well too.
Do you feel like there's any advantages or disadvantages in trying to prepare yourself and your horses here in South Dakota to not only be competitive, but for the NFBR specifically? We've talked about the competition in this circuit, but the weather this time of year is also an obvious factor. I know you've already touched on college rodeoing for Tarleton down in Stephenville. Do you feel like those girls in the South have any sort of leg up to the Northern girls? Or, what's your thoughts on the North versus South debate?
I love both places, but I will say South has a lot better in the winter. I mean, you can ride all year long, and they have quite a few barns, and a lot of their jackpots are in barns, and you can go to barns to practice. And so they have an opportunity, and they have to stay sharp because all those rodeos are down south. Up here in the winter, it's really hard. Last year before I went down to Texas before Fort Worth, I was legging my horses up in the snow. Like, I mean, we don't have the opportunity they do down there, but that doesn't take away from our drive. I mean, I remember growing up, we would go to Jerry Gallagher's arena, and it's colder in there than it is outside. And we would be roping in cover halls. And I mean, you just figure out what you want to do, where you want to be, and that's going to determine how much drive you have to do it.
Do you feel like you'd be where you were today had you not gone to Texas? The things you learned down there, the horsemanship, reading those different barriers, the setups. What's your opinion there?
Absolutely. I think it was a huge advantage getting to go down to Texas. Mark and Brittany were great. They helped me a bunch too. It's crazy, the setups down there. I mean, you're versing 200 girls at a college rodeo, and it's a short start, and you have to throw the rope because, I mean, there's rodeos where a 2-0 doesn't make it back. I mean, so yeah, getting that versus up here, it was hard for me. It was a big change. I went through a really big dry spell right when I went down there. And a lot of things, like my coach said, Mark, he would just say, throw your rope. He's like, just nod, ride, and throw your rope. And he's like, it's going to feel really weird and you're not going to be able to get it out of your hand as fast. But he's like, just throw it. And so I did that a lot. And I took a lot of fair share of misses. But eventually, once you kind of get the rhythm down and stuff, it comes natural and it comes to habit, you know. But it's different up here. We have long starts. I mean, mid two is a good run up here. So it helped me just step up to that next level, I think.
I remember a Facebook post going around not too long ago. Basically, they were talking about how it has become some sort of a sling fest, not as much horsemanship as there once was or maybe should be. Do you feel like that is a general consensus across the top girls?
Well, that's what I think about a little bit too. Back to the last question is up north, we had to score, we had to run, we had to ride a horse and stuff. And yeah, down south, don't get me wrong, they have great horsemanship, but it is getting to be a slinging match. That's why Houston, I think, is so fun to watch because you have to score them out there. It's a long run. But a lot of it comes down to these rodeos are no barrier, and then it becomes a drawing game. So, I mean, even if you have a bad calf and you have a long start, you can still make it work. But the hard thing, if you draw a bad calf in a short setup, it's hard to make it work when you have that many good calves and no barrier, and it is a slinging match. My preference is obviously I like to see something out. But yeah, a lot of those rodeos are coming down to where you don't have to see a lot. They want it to be fast. The producers want it to be fast. And it's fast. But sometimes I think these rodeos are getting to where it's too fast and people aren't really understanding what's going on. And being on the road and seeing it all, I generally love the rodeos I can look back at and say, yeah, we had to score them way out. Like Cheyenne's one of my favorites. Even some of those, the Northwest that we went to, you got to see out a little bit. And those ones were fun. I mean, you got to learn, you got to really watch your start. You got to blow up, be ready to read your calf and rope them, you know. But yeah, it's so hit and miss right now. I mean, you got some rodeos that are just want it shorter and shorter. And then you have some rodeos that are finally lengthening it out a little bit.
In your relatively short professional career, you've already won rodeos like Greeley, San Juan, Kennewick. You won a round at the NFBR in Vegas last year, placed the NFR Open in Colorado Springs. But what do you personally consider your biggest and favorite wins, your favorite rodeo to enter, and what's one or two that are the top of your bucket list to win before you call it quits someday?
I mean, looking back on like last year, my favorite win last year was Greeley. It was my first big win on my young horse. And then obviously the finals. That's always, I mean, making it there is one thing, but getting to win a round is another. But this year, some of my big ones were like Ellensburg, winning that, or even try to make it to Puyallup again. Those two are kind of my bucket list. And even Cheyenne, I mean, that one's so fun. But the Northwest was probably some of my favorite rodeos this year. We've never been out there, so we got the opportunity to go this year. And we were out there for 4 weeks, I think. And I mean, those rodeos are so fun. Hopefully someday we can go back again. And yeah, I would like to capitalize. I mean, want to capitalize on all of them, but it's not realistic.
Do you pay much attention to the standings throughout the year? Or are you more of a one run at a time person?
I try not to look at the standings at all. There's enough people that send it to me, especially towards the end of the year. But no, I try not to look at it. I mean, every run is a different run. You got to focus on that run. And I try to just back in the box and focus on that, not what happened, what could happen. It's just try to live in the moment.
What do you feel like has been the best advice you've ever been given? And what would you go back and tell your younger self or any young girl or grown woman that dreams of roping at the national finals?
If that's your dream, then chase it. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be tough. There's a lot of highs and lows. There's a lot of could I, should I, would I things. But at the end of the day, it's what you want to do. You have to pursue it. And I think looking back at my younger self, I never would have thought this was a dream. I mean, I always thought it'd be fun to rope in the pros and to make the finals, but for it to be a reality now is something that I asked me 5 years ago. I never would have said, yeah, I'm going to make the finals. So just getting this opportunity now, looking back at younger kids, I would tell them, don't stop chasing your dreams, because one day it's going to be in God's cards and you're going to make it and you're going to do what you were told to do. And I think that was a big thing with us, is just to follow the path that we're given.